Hey, Susan,
Yes.
I think we're ready to go. I have Missy and several of her colleagues and one of the surgeons here with me. And, you know, we'll go ahead and mute ourselves out. I know that you had some feedback you wanted to provide and then some questions you wanted to ask before you started up. So, again, same folks that we had on last week. We did press the record button, so we'll have the recording for Colleen. But yes, if you want to go ahead and get going, it's all yours, okay?
All right, Ryan, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining again. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just had a couple of questions. Well, I did want to relay a message to you that we already have the Pennsylvania ASC reporting that I was going to check on. We already have for your state, so that will be good. A couple of questions I have, though, around your ASC. Do y'all have multiple ASCs or just one?
Just one.
Okay. Are y'all on paper today or are y'all using another system?
Electronic. We use Provation Multicare.
Okay. Okay. And then do y'all do pre-admission testing at your ASC or is that not done there?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right. So that's all the questions that I had for you before we, you know, if you have any for me, just like on the other calls that we've had, let's make it interactive as we need to, as we go through the presentation. Let me remember, I am sharing already, so I think you can see Believing Better, correct?
We can see it.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to make note of. Obviously, I'm already logged in here. When we think about NextGen's ASC content, the most efficient way to interact with the ASC module in NextGen is to have everything tied to the procedure type. So, I mean, that includes everything from checklist, instructions, orders and everything, supplies and everything. But that, of course, can, you know, I said provider type, but that also can mean by surgeon. So what we have out of the box from the gastro perspective is we have quite a few things already built out, but it is totally configurable. And remember, there is a difference between customizable and configurable. Configurable are just preferences that are going to be, you know, set up and determined during implementation. And then customization may mean that we need to add things that we don't have or some kind of behavior that you say, hey, when you click on that, I really would prefer that it behaves this way versus that way. So that's also available. Again, play along with me. This is a demo environment, so everything's not completely, you know, configured out, but there is enough in here for you to get a really good consensus of, hey, this is how, you know, the workflow is going to take place. So up here in your inbox, you'll be able to see, you know, again, this is going to be determined by, you know, OR room or provider, surgeon, however you want to do it. But if you look over here on the far right, we have it set up just as an example of I'm looking at an OR room. And then again, you can have your own color coding, your own statuses, so that we can make sure that we know at all times, you know, what's going on with that particular patient. Now, obviously, I had a patient up, but when I select from the list, that provides me with, you know, this patient, James here. Of course, I have the hover capability. So anything that I have about this patient that I want to quickly hover over, face sheet type information, I certainly can. And then, of course, a little bit about demographics here, insurance, about the patient. As far as any of the providers that may be involved in the care or that we need to use in the background, automated document sharing to send additional op reports and things to. In addition, we also have some CC providers in this area that some of these can be renamed, but you really have up to 7 different providers that may be involved in the care that you may want to automatically send that op note to or whatever type of document that you would like to share. Now, I'm going to go to the history bar over here on the right-hand side. Now, of course, when we think about, you know, whoever schedules or the front desk scheduling or the surgery coordinators, whatever, we typically think of creating everything in a case. Now, that's not as important as, you know, those folks that do pre-admission testing, because sometimes if you do pre-admission testing, you do it a day before or something like that, and we want to tie everything together. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I'm not going to go into, as you can see over here, some of my navigational links here with some templates I have up. I'm going to bypass the pre-admission portion since you don't do that, but just know if you ever did that it is available. So when I select the intake, so that means that you would do things from the intake. So I'm going to go ahead and change my visit type to just regular procedure so that you can see that completely changed my navigational options here, as well as my sub-navigational links as well. And these again are out of the box like this, but they can be configured with any workflow that you want to define. Now, what I've done here is I've kept everything collapsed, my panels below, because I wanted you to be able to see the content that we have within each one of these tabs or templates so that you know what's out of the box. And also know that you don't necessarily have to interact with all of these, you know, at any given point. And all of us can be working in this patient's record at the same time. So it doesn't really matter how many we do have. Now, one additional question to ask you, too, that I should have asked you was about the CRNAs or anesthesiologists. Do y'all contract those out or are they employed?
Contract.
Okay. Will they be interacting with your system or do they interact with their own system or something and just leave you some information behind?
They'll interact with our system.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and keep in mind these panel controls allow you to keep these all expanded at all times or to toggle through, cycle through as needed. Now, it also allows you to define a workflow. So if you think about what your workflow looks like today, you see some of these are in a particular order, but you know, we have a lot of people that use this demo environment, so they kind of move these around all the time just to show you that you can drop and drag so you can define your own workflow. And that makes it real nice. But I'm going to go ahead and expand. I think that's the quickest way as I kind of work from, you know, the top to the bottom. And hang on just a minute. For some reason, it's not responding here. I seem to be frozen. Let me see here. Let me close this down for a second and see what's going on here. All right, let's see if we can get this to expand the way I want it to. There we go. So what I want you to note is, because I didn't know, you know, exactly how this worked for you, is that I don't have a procedure or anything in here just yet, because I didn't know exactly who the audience was going to be to know, you know, exactly how this was going to work. But before I can put in like a schedule or anything, of course, I need to go ahead and have the information about the appointment, you know, the surgical procedure. So I'm going to go ahead and just come in here and select lower GI for the sake of demo today. Let's say this is diagnostic. And then it continues to take me down a path. But you notice that it actually prompts me from field to field, so I don't have to click in that. I also can come in here and I can add from a patient diagnosis if I have one already, or I can search for a diagnosis code or codes. I also have indications here that I can add as needed, and this is totally configurable even though we have some of this out of the box. So maybe there's a family history, patient reported, or maybe there was a result that came back that, you know, said that there was a, you know, blood in the stool. But whatever, these are just questions here, right? So if they're having symptoms, they're having whatever, you can capture that as needed. And that would be discrete data if you needed to report. Now, once I have this procedure selected, it pre-populates a lot of information for me, like my checklist and everything. This was all blank until I selected that procedure. So within all of these different little tabs up here at the top, which are, you know, we share a lot of different information because different people work in different areas. So we do carry that over. But once I add that, then that defaulted for me, as I said, that drives the documentation, that prompts us with the questions that we want to ask, and defaults to, you know, any other preferences that we have. Now we can go in and over here on the right, now that we have the procedure, we can indicate, you know, the check-in time, the date and stuff like that. So we're just going to go ahead and put this in. I can use clocks for time in and time out, or I can put time in, whatever it is that I need to do within those fields. And of course, we talked about the CC copies and everything. That's pulling from up here at the top. these CC copies. Now that may have been attached with the, the surgery appointment back whenever it was scheduled. These are histories here. Now, obviously this is a demo patient, so we already have information in here, but if you have information from within your EHR clinical side, then we can share that information, or we can get it from a CCDA, from data share outside of our organization. Or we can have the patient complete information for us in advance. So you may have all kind of, not just a consent form, but you may have some history forms if you don't have the appropriate history that you do need. Now, in the event that you do need to add anything, there is an add button down here at the bottom for me to come in and add what's needed. But there's also a review button. So if I did have anything default in here, when I open this, it checked it for me to save me those clicks to say, yes, I did review the histories. Now, coming on down here, we can have, for some reason, they had a lot of things set up with this particular procedure I selected. They did not have the patient prep, but the patient prep could have been defaulted in here as well. Now, there's also pick lists within these areas. Again, some of these are out of the box, right? So, you can pick from these things, kind of drives you down a path again, whatever it is that you want to need. And you can say full, completed, or whatever, not completed, partially completed. And put your time and date stamp in once again. But you also, again, I would recommend that just be a part of your standard defaults by procedure type. You also have a comment area. You can type in here. You could use mobile to dictate in here. You've also got what we call my phrases. Think about, this is just being a predefined little macro in a way, right? It's a sentence builder. And we can have some standards here that we can insert very quickly, but we also can change, whatever it is that we had within that default. And then, of course, we could just add that down here to the grid. These pre-procedure checklists here, these timeouts and things like that. Now, this is a new concept here, but again, these are totally configurable. Some would be out of the box, but
I'm so sorry. We did have a question pop in and we were muted. If you don't mind, I believe Dr. Fusco would like to ask a question.
Oh, absolutely.
The customized phrases, are they the entire system or doctor dependent?
It's your own decision. Some people like to standardize those, and some people like those to be by provider.
It can be by provider, yes. Okay,
absolutely. That was the whole idea of us calling it my phrases based on, my preferences as my login. But then we had a lot of clients that said, can we standardize those for everyone? And absolutely you can. So, but by provider was our intention originally when we designed it.
Thank you.
And that will be, just so you know, that will be in any area where you see defaults like that. You'll have the option to do it by provider or share those across or just standardize it with everybody. Because you could have another surgeon that says, hey, I like what you have. But it may not be everybody, right? It could just be one other surgeon who says, hey, let me see what you've got as your defaults. I want those. So it's everything in between. Now, these pre-surgical, safety checklists, again, you can make them yours, but we have some out of the box. But one selection says completed, but I can rotate around to not applicable, or just simply we didn't need to ask it. But they're really fast and easy to go through and go ahead and say we completed these types of safe surgery checks. Of course, there's a timeout that we're calling it a timeout, but down here, completed and documented by whom was logged into the system and who made those selections. Now we have our allergies here. So, again, do I need to update? Is everything good? If I simply need to review, I can say I reviewed with no updates, or I can update as needed. But hopefully, I don't know if any discussion has been had about having an enterprise chart as to what you may be sharing, even though the ASC is typically a separate, you have to keep everything separate. It's a separate tax ID. And some states, of course, require that we keep that separate record. But we still have ways of sharing information, right? So just like with the histories that I mentioned, you can do the same thing with allergies, medications, and everything. You can share those and just have them, update or review as needed. Barriers to care. I mean, somebody's previously added something here, but it's as simple as if you do need to document barriers to care, about this patient. That add button is very simple, and I'd say, hey, that's today's date, I recorded it, and maybe it's age or chronic conditions or something like that, and you can put comments in here, and then you can save it, and that will just update in that grid. Of course, medications, you know, a lot of different ways to get medications in here, right? Whether it's from SureScript's database, whether it's from a CCDA through data share, or whether we're sharing the EHR. But again, the add update button and the medication reconciled indicator here for us. If you do need to do a review of systems, again, you're not required to hit all these panels. This is the intake. So since you don't do pre-admission testing, then we typically say, okay, then, you know, this is the day of, right? So you're going to go ahead and do whatever your intake requires. But if you're going to do a review of systems, you can have a default one, again, to save you time. You could come in here and what your typical review of systems for a surgical procedure looks like. I would use my defaults up here at the top just to say this is my, you know, globally normal one, and then make changes, you know, so I'm charting by exception, right? So I could go ahead and do that as a quick way to update what's needed. Now, vital signs, we're going to take them in stages if needed for that particular type of procedure, if needed. So, you know, if I say I'm going to take them, you know, for my initial intake, right? Ultimately, all of them will end up in the grid in different areas because we're going to share those. But look down here, we have the interface to vitals. So we'll be able to bring these in electronically, but there is an add button. So if you don't have a way to bring those in electronically, you could say this is a baseline, and you could go ahead and just, you know, key in and tab across as to, you know, what information you're putting in here. And I'm just putting in a few things just so you can see. If you did an EKG, you could might say it's normal or whatever. If there's any pain going on, you might indicate that level of consciousness and things. But again, you've got the my phrase concept over here. If you need to, you know, put any comments in, or again, you can type. And we'll save this, and that will drop it into the grid, because ultimately all of our vitals, if we're taking multiples throughout the course of the procedure, will be in one place. Now, so that's what we had on our intake. We just simply worked from the top to the bottom of the template. Down in the bottom right, though, there is a document generating capability within each template. So as we completed an intake or anything else we did, that we have a document to go with it. So this is kind of just like, it really follows, you know, when we get that muscle memory from the template top to bottom, that's what the document does too. Kind of goes top to bottom, what we did. And again, those documents, we have those out of the box, but they certainly can be configured as well to, you know, this whatever style or anything you're accustomed to or that you just prefer. All right. So now that we covered some of this information here, you're going to notice as I move to the, you know, kind of move left to right with some of these other tabs, some of these are going to be the very same thing, because we all need to keep our eye on all things, and we all don't want to go through these tabs each time we're hunting for information. So you're going to notice that the appropriate panels that you've already seen will be represented in the other areas as we kind of move along here. So if there's any questions, you know, let me know since y'all are on mute. So let's go into the pre-procedure tab up here. So we're kind of moving along. We'll highlight it. You'll see it turns blue as well, because now we're going to be in the pre-procedure. We do recognize, though, that, you know, these are different folks working in different areas in most ASCs. So again, we all can be in the chart at the same time as needed. We all can be doing different functions and everything. It will update real time, which is nice, so that everybody that's looking at this particular record has the most current information possible. So you see some of the same tabs, but you see some new tabs now that we're in the pre-procedure area, and also the capability to generate that document. So let's expand this. We had procedure orders. We had things associated with it, and I don't know, let's see, this may not be so realistic. I don't know what they've got pre-populated in here, but again, play along with me, because totally going to be what you want, right? If you have multiple procedures that you're doing on the same day, that's what the little arrows here are for, because if we have certain orders to go along with one procedure, that might not be the same for the other procedure. So we would be able to arrow to the next procedure and take a look down here to see what's going on. Now, just because I have these orders doesn't mean that I've actually, that I'm actually going to use all of these items. I have an opportunity up here to go search for some more. Now, I may have my standing orders here, right, by procedure type. And again, that could be by provider. And I have a category here as well. So, my procedure orders here are just what's available, what I wanted available. But you see here, add to today's orders on one click, add all displayed, or verify procedure orders when added to today's order. So you can do your verification at the same time that you're adding those to your grid down here at the very bottom. So if I say add on one click, that means that as I select something here, it's going to go ahead and somebody did something to that one. There was no verification here. So, but down here, when I drop it in, if it's not a one click and it needs me to record something like a timeout or something, or time in, time that we gave that medication, or if we gave less than what we expected or more than what we expected, we can indicate that we verified it. We can use our clock again that looks at your server time, or we can come into this field and we can put our own time in here, because this could be a late entry, right? Or maybe you find it more efficient that you don't, that you're not interacting with this template every moment. So therefore that would be a late entry perhaps. And then of course you can add it to the grid. And then ultimately someone, all these orders here, somebody's going to verify them, and we can verify the individual orders one by one if we need to, or we can go ahead and say, I want to verify all orders. Now, look over here on the right, because there's a sign, there's an update, and there's a task, because we may have had to update something we changed. Like I said, we could change meds, we could change the strength or something, or the amount, whatever it is that we needed to do. But ultimately, think about your processes today. I'm not sure what it looks like, but if you need to task a provider or someone to sign off, then that's why the task button is here. For those that say, hey, our workflow would be that, we needed to, send a task to the provider that they need to sign off on certain things. That's why it's there. Ultimately, we could say we're going to sign off on it. This pre-procedure care here, you do have links over here on the far right. Anytime you see these little colored links over here, you have an opportunity to interact back to those areas. So we saw allergies a while ago when we were on the intake template. We saw medications, but we want you to be able to access them from here as needed. And then consents, thinking about consents, right? At what point do you generate consents? Some people tell me, oh, we do that on our clinic side at the time that, the patient agrees to have their surgical procedure. And you certainly can do that. You can do it anytime you want to. You can do it on the clinic side. You can do it on this side. But the patient,
we, just so you know, I don't know if it helps to describe it, but we do the consent all on our pre-op admission.
Okay, absolutely. Well, then you can continue to do that wherever you need to. That's just available in the event that you do need to generate one. Thank you for that info.
Thank you.
Do you do that? Do you do the Bill of Rights too then?
Yes, we confirm that they've received it. They should receive that when they schedule their appointment, but we confirm it.
Okay.
Upon admission.
So some good comments, some good information to share, because everybody's workflow is a little bit different. And that's why I always mention when you're looking at a demo environment, even though this is, we have all this out of the box, so that we do have this, things can be changed based on your workflow. Certain panels can be even left out as needed, as long as you have certain things, that you're going to check off. It could be a part of your checklist to say, hey, yeah, we've got the patient received the Bill of Rights. We do have the consent on the encounter or in the patient's chart. You don't necessarily need these certain panels. So keep that in the back of your mind that you don't have to interact with these panels, or we can hide these panels, or whatever it is that you need.
Okay.
Okay. It's very flexible. Now there is a pre-procedure care checklist here. I don't know, do we have, the current HPI, when was it done and stuff like that that's on the chart. Because we can alert you in red if we don't have an HPI within the allotted time that we need it.
Yes, 30 days.
Mm-hmm. But
Yep.
we do it the day
We do
of.
it the day of it. So you'll never have that. No. Awesome.
Yeah. So again, things that you don't need, then, don't worry about that. We can take that away. And then if they did, antibiotics or anything, you could say yes or no, right? And then I don't know how much you record or don't, but, these are just options for you. Now, the day of, you might be taking, I don't know what, you probably instruct them. There's probably some instructions for them about not bringing personal effects and things with them. Or I don't know if you have a place that you do put them. But if you do, then that's obviously what this is for. So if there's anything, a wallet or something that, James here brought with him, you can even, put in here, where did you store them? I don't know what you have as far as storage goes. The reason all this is here is because, believe it or not, our ASC, our clients that have ASCs, at one point in time said, oh, we use a locker. No, we put it at the nurse station. No, they're responsible. They have to be with themselves or a family member or whatever. So that's how this kind of evolves into the different options that you see, because at one point in time, certain clients said, this is the way we do it. And somebody else says, no, we need that. So it kind of evolves into options. Pre-procedure labs right here. Again, people say, hey, we do that in the clinic side, we don't have to, we can record all of this though. So if you want to just record, or maybe there's none that you needed to take or whatever, then you can just say it wasn't applicable. We're back to vital signs monitoring because we're in the pre-procedure now. So we did a baseline, remember, during intake. But now the only difference, and I'm not going to repeat that necessarily, but now I would say I'm taking them in the pre-procedure. And again, you may not do it this many stages. But again, some people do, so that's why the options are there. But whatever stages that you take them, then they'll just continue to add to the grid. And then, of course, your scoring and your stages here. Now, this is going to be a pop-up so that we can just, again, not sure if you complete this or not, or at what point in time you do complete it, or how often you complete it. But ultimately, once you've got the information there, again, username that did this, and that will put it into the grid for that particular stage of the procedure. Now, for the IV panel here, insertion, removal, or fluids or whatever, there is an add button here. So I could come in here and I could say, this is the first attempt and it happened at that time, it was located wherever. And then again, maybe we used lidocaine, and you can have, again, these come out of the box, but you can narrow down that pick list. You could take things away that you say, oh, we don't need that. And then this is a multi-selection, everything's all good. So, it's a multi-selection. Ultimately, when we remove it, we would come back in here and do a similar thing. And now that would update into the grid as well. Now, some people do the little quick loads here for this. They define, again, some defaults that they might want to happen within this panel for IV. So you can do that too. Now, the documentation log. So anybody has security, I should say, anybody that's involved in this procedure in any form or fashion can enter information into this documentation log. This documentation log was designed to be a centralized location so that, we have patient assessments, we can even do time in, time outs here if we wanted to, meds administered, any adverse effects, any kind of nursing assessments or things like that. That was the intent of it, is to have a log where we can have that central location so that anybody that wants to enter anything that they can. Again, I could have different types of entries, right? I mean, these could be different types of entries. They could be, subtypes to go along with the types that we had here, even, subcategories here. But there's also a quick load here. I don't know, let's see if somebody has something, but look at the examples that somebody's put in here for us just to say, hey, this was a procedure start-stop time or a nursing assessment, plan of care, because the documentation log is going to follow us now. It's going to be on the next tabs that I go as I move across those tabs at the top. The documentation log is going to be visible in all of the areas so that people can add information here. So, you know, that makes it nice that we know that there's one central location that we could come in here, you know, no matter who's loading and when they're loading, right? We could just, you know, put that in here as needed. So whatever, and there's another add button here, so I can come in here and I could, let's say I don't have anything in my preload, or I don't have something that I need. You can have additional options right here. So that if you were going to do some kind of a nursing assessment and you just wanted to select something because there was, you know, just one item you wanted to come in here and put in here, whatever. You found out something. This is kind of takes you down a path, as you can see. And I can add new. I can continue on to add new until I save and close, and then that would drop everything in the grid. But just think about this as all these different options, just as examples: patient in room, procedure start, stop time, sedation, all this. And of course, again, just like with the intake, there is a note to go along with any of the entries that we had, whether they defaulted or whether we, you know, modified them or added them on the fly. All the times here, the users, of course, that was the consent and stuff was in there just because we had it in there. Anything in that documentation log, IVs, and so on. All right, intra-procedure. So moving on to the next tab here, and again, you're going to see some of the same information that you just saw. And again, they're collapsed so you can see what we do have. So some of these you did see, some of these are going to be new again. So let's go ahead and expand now that you've seen what we have in here. Additional personnel, right? So did you have a circulator? You know, who else, you know, may have joined? So any personnel. And I can just come in here and I could, you know, put that this is a circulator or whatever if I do need to add anything. And then I could, you know, put a name and put the stage that they actually joined us. And then that would just add it to the grid. Now you do have, you know, this same concept here, another checklist, right? Another checklist, 1 completed, 2 non-applicable, 3 I didn't even need to address. But again, very easily I can go through all of these that apply so that I can completed it and then signed off on it down at the very bottom. Surgery inventory. So we do have inventory management in here. Now, so, you know, we can build the preference card, right? So we have what's called, you know, inventory control module. It's for receiving, tracking, configuring, you know, surgical preference cards. And you see that this is for this surgeon right here, Dr. Barclay, for this procedure here. Now, look up here on the right. These are all the items. Now, this has nothing to do with billing because if it's all inclusive, right, we're not charging separately for any of these items based on setup for this payer. But we still want to do case costing and things like that, right? So you see here, and I can submit those charges to PM, even if they're not going out the door, or if they need to go out the door or whatever. But I can also highlight any of these and remove them. Or I can come up here and I can search by a category or another item that if on the fly we need to add something. But this is just saying this is my standard preference card for this procedure. And then back to our IV, same thing, right? We're going to hit the add button, whatever we need to do, so that we have everything recorded. Same thing with the documentation log. What did we do now? You know, whatever phase you're in, whatever order that you're doing things in, you may go ahead and say, you know, procedure start time and default that. That's an event. These are all considered events. Same thing with monitoring. Again, you've seen the vitals a couple times now. If I do need to, you know, do the score again into procedure, I can go ahead and do the score again, just like we did before. And then here's another kind of checklist here, right? This is another safe surgery into procedure one again. Now, if there was any specimens or anything, I could actually, you know, indicate that we did specimens. Again, it's just simply sign off. So a lot of the workflow function behaves the same. It's just different information, right? But, you know, from thinking about learning to interact with these panels, you'll find that a lot of it's, you know, the same. Back to the procedure orders that we originally saw, where we had the orders and we're just simply selecting whatever it is that we want to so we can drop it into the grid, send a task if we need provider sign off. Or go up here to the top and search by category or type so that we can add additional items to what we might want to have handy that are just, you know, originally were attached to that procedure as options. Specimen collection, if you did do any specimen collection. Now, this one didn't default to that procedure. It could have, but it did not. But there's an add button here for you to put in all the necessary information about the specimen collection, all the important information that you need. And then also, too, you can print a requisition from here. So if you do need to print that requisition, but we also have the interfaces. So, you know, if you have any kind of interfaces that you're going to need, from the ASC perspective, it's just like anything on the clinic side, right? We have, you know, radiology and lab interfaces. And then, of course, generating a note to go with this as needed. Now, the physician procedure. Just to make a statement here, and I don't know how your surgeons do it. Most of our surgeons don't interact with these templates so much. A lot of them will just use their mobile device, the NextGen mobile device, to dictate their op note, or they'll use macros. They'll insert, they'll say, you know, within the mobile device, they'll just say insert standard colonoscopy op note or whatever, and then adjust it as needed. That is an option if the surgeons are kind of hands off on these templates. I am going to show you a couple of other things down here, though, because now that we're in the physician procedure, again, you see some of the same things that you've seen before, but there's a couple new things. Again, eye on the procedure or procedures, right? Reason for visit. Now, this put a statement in here for us. We didn't have to do that. That's from the selections I made when I, you know, put in the procedure itself. But over here on the left-hand side, and there's an additional down here, if I need to come in here and do an HPI type, I can. Again, if I wanted to use mobile, I could dictate an HPI if I needed to do an HPI at this point in time. Same procedure orders we've talked about a couple times. Again, in the procedures grid, we put that here so that if you've sent them tasks, if you've sent providers tasks to say, hey, we need you to sign off on this, well, now they don't have to go hunt that down in one of the other tabs, because they want to stay, if they are interacting with the templates themselves on the desktop, they want to stay within their physician procedure tab, kind of look at it from top to bottom and not have to navigate a bunch of different places. So this is in here so they can come in and they can sign off here. And they could sign off on all at the same time if that's a protocol that y'all allow, or they could simply highlight the ones that they wanted to sign off on individually. If by chance I needed to do a physical exam at this point in time, I could have another quick load, you know, that this is just a normal exam or whatever type exam that you would do, because we're just going to chart by exception again. You may have, you know, who knows how many physical exam regions you're going to have as your defaults. But the nice thing is, the takeaway is that I can use my quick loads to have a starting point. And I can still use my phrases for comments down here as needed. But it sounds, so y'all do it, sounded like I heard somebody say y'all do it the day of or the day before the physical?
The day of, yes.
Okay, so the day of. So basically, you might use this to come in here and say, okay, everything's good. Patient still remains a good candidate, and we're all good with that. Now, the sedation required, you know, some of this could have been established with the selection of the procedure, right? In those procedure orders. But when we think about anesthesia, you know, what kind of anesthesia is required? Again, that could have been within the orders. But this is still more detail. You know, this is post-op pain management stuff. But again, some people say, well, you know, we might want to indicate sedation is required and stuff, but it's really defaulting within our orders in the other grid. But I just wanted you to know that you do have this out of the box here, so you can put in, you know, this information if you prefer to do it this way versus having everything, you know, within the grid that or that documentation log in the orders area. Now, documentation here. So when we talked about, when I mentioned that most of our surgeons typically just dictate with their mobile device or use macros, you can also have a quick load here for a standard description of a procedure. So let's see what somebody has here for Dr. B. Okay, so if that's a standard description, again, that might be too short, but that's one that's in here that, you know, just to show a concept more or less, what would you want by provider, if you want it to be a standard description, and then I can actually highlight this and I can edit it as needed. So I can say I want to edit, and then it opens it up to where I can come in and I can actually edit it. It looks like it's taking just a few minutes, but again, let's see here. So here it is. I can come in here, I can edit, do whatever I want. I can use my phrases. If I had my mobile device, I could still, you know, use it like a microphone, right? We have now what we call direct to desktop. So I don't necessarily have to dictate or use speech to text, you know, within my mobile fields over there. I can pick up my mobile device and use it like a microphone, put my cursor wherever I want to speak, and use the new functionality of direct to desktop, which is just like Dragon, right? I put my cursor where I want to speak. So really, there's a dictation style or a document style, I should say, for every provider.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Can we still use a wired microphone like we do now?
So do you have a one that you plug into your like a USB?
Yes, they use that modal right now.
Works very well.
Okay. Well, you could, but our NextGen mobile, you don't have to have anything plugged in, and it is in modal as well in the background. So I could just have a device. It doesn't have to necessarily be my phone, but that's what most providers use. Pick up my phone, hit a button, and start speaking, and that's my microphone, and I don't have to have a plug-in microphone.
But it's available, possible.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. You've also got the My Phrases too, where you can do, you know, again, a standard description of something here. All right, now, billing. Billing can be tied to the procedures, right, when we're configuring that. So somebody just threw something in here again to show you. Now, this is not a one-to-one. If it was a one-to-one, it would have defaulted with that service item code within the field already. But because this is a one-to-many relationship, then I could go ahead and just select the one that I want to associate with this procedure. And then, of course, any diagnosis code or codes that I have on this patient would be available in the pick list. So whatever I'm capturing here, even if I'm capturing some modifiers or whatever, all of that, when I, you know, save all of this, this will go into the holding tank for billing. But this is how we're capturing charges here if you want to capture them within these templates.
Hey, Susan.
Uh-huh.
I know you're going to get to this, but we have a question from Sarah about importing the images from their scopes.
Yes.
So, like I said, I know you'll get there, but just know that that came up in the chat.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome.
So you can't, what we'll have to do is we'll have to check on the devices for those interfaces, absolutely. And if we don't have certain ones, doesn't mean we can't do it. Let me show you on down here. Now here's just where I have my assessment, but I could add more plan information. But here's patient recalls. Here's findings. So a couple of things here. Now, again, this panel was way down towards the bottom. If you want to use this panel, there's a couple of ways. Some of our providers really kind of like, you know, interacting with this particular image because they can have whatever images they want already. Whoops, hold on. Where did that go? Bounced me down when I said take me here. But anyway, they can have the images and they can also code from here. That looks like somebody stuck some findings in here. So you can kind of build a statement here. You can have your images, and those could be images that you uploaded too, not just drawings type. But these are active images to where I could put different kinds of images, whether they're, you know, static, whether they're images I can select things on, whether they came from a scope or something else. I could have findings right here so that when I selected an image, I could select the finding. But also too, and this one, I don't think they've got an active one. You can have an active one to where I select on here, it builds text for me. So if there's a finding in a certain area, I want it to just build a statement for me, just when I select the image. I'm hoping that I'm explaining that enough to where, clearly enough to where you can grasp the concept that from an image, I can actually build sentences. Now look over here. Now this is an image from a scanner or a camera or, you know, anything I want to upload.
I'd like to know what the report looks like that the patient takes home with them. Are
Okay.
images on that?
They can be, if you know, if you have images, it depends on if you have images, and I don't think we have any though, but I'll show you something here. Let's generate a couple documents. I'm gonna show you something. So play along with me. All right, let's see here. Let's see what this looks like. There's a standard description of the procedure. Okay, that's just short and sweet. But let's say you can have images, but I'm going to add one here just to show you what it would look like if we had one inserted. So let me see if I can find a patient image right quick, just so you can visualize. Okay, so if we had any kind of document where we had an image, you can have it in here, and I could even say how big I wanted it to be, right? And then I can save it so that that is, you know, that goes out on my, you know, my letter to my, you know, referring provider or PCP or any co-managed providers that we have linked with this encounter with this procedure. So you can have, now we'll have to find out if there's any restrictions or anything, but absolutely whatever you have in your patient encounter for this can be on here. And some of that, I believe, can be automated to where I'm not having to right click and enter that, but I just wanted to show you what it would look like if you had images in any kind of document. So now that we have that over here on the right-hand side, this is your history bar of everything that's been done by everybody. You see, now once we saved it, it's there forever, to, you know, unless you took it out.
Susan, real quick, and Vince, if you could hear me, when we came and did our initial workflow assessment, and I worked with a couple of the surgeons, we did already confirm that their cameras are able to be integrated. So Susan, we kind of did that beforehand. Vince, didn't we confirm that they were the same devices that Minnesota Gastro was using?
Yes, they definitely had some, but we did find the interfaces for each one of their devices that I got an inventory of. Yes.
Oh, that's great news. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing that with us. That is awesome. So if you uploaded them and they were in here, they would be in, you know, they would be visible in here. If you had multiples, you would have tabs across the top, just like I have with these just static, you know, images that I have. And over here, it would record how many you have. And again, you could highlight and say, hey, these are my findings, or you might click on an image too that you want to interact with. But it is a nice panel here if you do have those interfaces. So that's great to hear.
How do you generate a letter to the referring physician when you're done?
Well, that depends. So some people use, look over here, when I generated okay, let's generate the document. So this is the document, not what you would send to a referring. This is just a document in general, right? This has got everything on it. pre-procedure, physical, this is the whole 9 yards pretty much. That one that I just generated, the procedure letter down here at the bottom, it's over here on the right now, it says referring. So what you can do, and this one was just short and sweet, right? Reason for the visit, procedure note, any images you want to include, assessment, done. It might have, of course, it might have your, any other things you want on it. So you can dictate it, or you can certainly have it generated as a separate document, because you don't want to send them that compliance document with everything from A to Z. And so if you feel comfortable with a standard one that y'all decide that you want, then you can just have it generated right here, and it can automatically, through automated document sharing, remember, look up here to see, you know, what providers we have that it needs to go to, so that it automatically goes and the staff or providers are not having to do anything to make that happen. Now, something that we didn't do because, well, post-procedure too, but we have anesthesia over here, obviously, that the anesthesiologists or CRNAs can interact with too. Now, of course, the provider doesn't need to necessarily here, but again, orders, very similar to what we saw before, except when I expand it, again, the orders are here, the co-sign off, the sedation information, the pre-procedure evaluation. So, you know, do they still remain a candidate, right? And then here's, again, we saw this panel before to sign off on. Documentation log, they're going to be doing the same thing. So anybody, remember, this is the centralized location for all types of documentation. So we all know we have one grid to come and see everything ultimately, no matter where it was captured from. But I can sort it out, remember, by my entries, types, and stuff like that. So if I just want to look at anesthesia, medications, or whatever I want to look at, that I can sort and filter this very easily. And then, of course, they're going to do, you know, they're going to do their IVs or fluids or whatever they need to do. They're going to do it the same way we talked about. We're going to add, drop it in the grid. If they're monitoring vitals, again, at what point, what stage in the procedure did they, you know, monitor those? And then they're going to create, look right here. So from their entries of saying, you know, these are the medications, blah, 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 then they're going to create an anesthesia procedure note and an anesthesia charge slip. So that we can, you know, the start and stops of the types of medications, so that that anesthesia charge slip is going to be used for billing of anesthesia. Because you notice that was not on the panel for the providers where we captured the procedure code for that procedure. Are y'all doing the billing too for anesthesia?
No, we do not. They do their own billing.
Like, what's the report look like?
Okay.
What's the letter look like? Customize that.
But we would print that form. We would essentially print that anesthesia charge form, and we kind of do that now already. And they take it and they do their billing on their end for it with it.
Okay, so when they do their entries up here, when y'all have this defined exactly how you want it, and they put in their documentation log what they did, then that will be on that form. But again, if you need that form to look different, any of these documents that have been generating for you, you're welcome to use them out of the box. They are already ready. But if you needed to adjust them, you certainly can. But basically, okay, so basically any document that I generated, other than the referring letter, because we don't want everything to go out to the referring letter. They don't want to see a 10-page document, right? So other than that referring letter, the other documents that went along with each one of these tabs that I interact with really just kind of follow down, you know, the path here, right? The sedation, the procedures, the evaluations, the documentation log, the IV. So that's what we have included with our standard documents, and then they can be adjusted.
Hey, Susan, I'm going to interrupt real quick. I know a couple of physicians, they have things to do at 1 o'clock. I want to maybe let anybody ask any questions before they have to go, because there's 5 minutes left, if you don't mind, and you can continue on.
Okay, sure.
You guys, is there anything you all want to see that she didn't review, or any questions, something a little bit better?
I think Dr. Fusco answered some of the questions I had about the photos and stuff like that. Now I guess it's just a matter of trying it and see what happens.
Okay.
I think the monitor should be vertical instead of horizontal.
Yeah.
This is a 9-foot document.
Yeah.
It's a huge factor.
The monitors that work with vertical.
You can, yes, absolutely.
It's much less scrolling.
Feels like a lot of clicking to see the report, but I can't tell if that's
Well, I think the
the
intent,
way it's being shown or.
yeah, well, she's showing you everything possible. I think one thing to take away is we can minimize and reduce as much of that. The MAs are also doing a lot of this. She's showing it. She's doing the majority.
Well-
They're doing the majority of it, right?
Kind of what I thought.
Yep. And then additionally, that they're doing the my phrases. So it is click. It's more clicking, but it's a lot less typing, right? So you click on one my phrase and it populates everything for you. You click on it and it populates the stuff for you. So that's why there's a few more clicks, I would say.
When she's talking about using your phone to do the note,
Yeah.
her other physicians who are writing their colonoscopy reports, like just walking down the hallway, like dictating a full report off their phone, do they not have to sit down at a computer to write the note?
So
There's a microphone.
can you hear that?
That's a microphone.
Yeah, just using your phone.
It's just
It is like that.
Instead of using an M-modal point device, you can
It should be near the computer.
Okay, that's what the way she was kind of saying, I wasn't sure if there were people. who-
Ryan, I could hear a little bit. Just keep in mind that when we're doing a presentation for ASC, we usually have in the audience people that are in the pre-procedure, people that do intake, people that do post-procedure. So when we go through it, then, providers might say, oh, that's a lot of clicking. But keep in mind, when you come in, you're only going to go to your physician procedure tab. And a lot of that's already going to be pre-populated for you, right? In fact, remember when I said that you can rearrange this? So maybe you want to go straight, you want to have your documentation panel at the top, and you want to have that findings where you're going to be able to have your images, or maybe you want that on the very top. So maybe that other stuff you already know about, it's in good shape. So maybe, let's say that we were just going to have this one open and this one open, and then you can access the others as needed. I'm going to save my view. So when I come in here, I'm going to quick load or dictate using M-modal or whatever, and then I'm going to look at my images. So see, you can streamline your workflow easily with putting the panels where you want and only accessing what you need to interact with.
That's a good point.
Susan, is the informed consent form signed on the pre-procedure note on a pad, or how does that, where's the consent form?
So the consent forms are going to be, once they're signed, wherever they're signed, they can be signed. Let's see if I had a consent sign over here. Hold on, I was looking for one that I may have because we didn't generate one. We have consent right here. But keep in mind, we have a lot of different ways that they can sign these. Anybody can sign any type of consent forms. In fact, our mobile device is really an easy way. If you want it on the iPad, you can have that. But I can have patients sign their consent right on an iPad, and it transfers over here to this image. If you already have signature pads, it is compatible with signature pads for capture. See right here where it says signature pad? So we can hand them a signature pad and let them sign. So consents are really easy for us to, obtain, even witnesses' signatures, however many signatures we need.
I have another question. A lot of our patients are filling out all the information from home before they actually make the appointment. It's called Freesia. How does that done through this system? They can make the schedule, an office visit or procedure from their computer. They can input their history from home. Is that available?
Oh yeah. So a couple things. And I didn't know, and Ryan, I don't know what your conversation's been, if they're going to continue to use Freesia or if they're going to try to move some of that over to NextGen, Patient Engage. But we have some of the same functionality that Freesia has, but we also have a great relationship and great integration with Freesia to bring that in. Our patient engagement portal has an opportunity to complete forms that are needed. that can come in similar to what Frisia does. So it's, I'm sure somebody may have had that conversation with Ryan already. I'm not, so I don't want to step on toes because I'm not sure what's been discussed.
So we've talked high level. They understand that we do have a business partnership with Frisia, but I've also been transparent with them that functionality is also available in some of the components and add-ons of PXP. The thing that we see folks leaving Frisia for is those merchant processing costs. It generally ends up being a little more expensive for them. So they know they can stay. They know they can move. That'll be something that we'll kind of further discuss if and when they choose to, kind of go down this NextGen route or not.
Gotcha.
And Vince, I don't know if I misspoke or you got anything to add, but it's pretty much, yes, all the functionality is available. It's just piecing it together with NextGen if you want to leave Frisia. But if you want to stay on Frisia, you're more than happy to because it's fully integrated with NextGen as well.
So we could keep Frisia for now to make a decision later if we wanted to ever abandon.
100%. Yep. You can make that decision whenever you want.
Yeah. Can we just text me later? Sure, I'm gonna see it.
All right. So yeah, that's something that can be decided at whatever point in time y'all want to, but we definitely can do that. So you have the information. Now, when you said those forms and everything from Frisia, is that how you get your consents done too?
No.
Okay, because we can do consents like that too if you wanted to through our PXP portal. But we do, like I said, through the mobile app, I can bring up a consent form, have the patient sign, even a witness if I need to, hit one button, it's in the chart. It's in that encounter. So it's pretty slick how that works too if you're going to be using mobile anyway for anything.
Okay, Susan, sorry about that. We did have a couple physicians leave, but if you want to continue on, I don't know what the timing is like for, I guess I should ask you.
Yeah, no, I think we're fine. We can keep going as long as there's more to see. Right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a few more minutes before my next call, but the only other thing I did want to do, well, I did want to allow for questions as well, but the post procedure we didn't hit upon, but as you suspect, it can default to all of the post, procedure checklist and things like that. Most of this you've not seen discharge instructions and everything, but those can be tied to the procedure as standard defaults. So again, we've got the orders. We may have some discharge orders, right? Those checklists again, so that we can quickly just run through that, say everything's been done that we want to be done. And then, of course, if we're going to take vitals one last time, post-procedure, we would indicate post-procedures, have that interface, or hit the add button. Anything we might need in the documentation log, again, that's what it's for, that central location for us to put anything we want, even comments. IV removal, right? We come in here and say, okay, now we're going to come in here. We're going to say we're going to remove it, depending on who removes it. Score, are we going to do the score again? Post-procedure, and we'd come in here and say we're going to do that again. And then again, any other, if there's any, okay, so we can attach, remember, orders, standard post-procedure orders, just like any other orders. However, if there's anything that comes up that needs to be added or anything you want to do from here, that's why this orders panel is added. Not because you have to interact with it. It's just here in case you want to interact with it. In fact, you could leave it if you say, and then use it if you need to. But here's some standard default post-procedure instructions that we had with that procedure for colonoscopy. But again, you could add you could add something new, right? You could add some comments down here. You might type in something special because something special was going on with that patient. So I could type in here or dictate in here. I could click the add button to add it to my, what I want. See, I typed in here, so I added additional instructions on the fly. Then here's like generate the patient discharge instructions, which, by the way, if a patient is using our portal, then they may say, can you send that to the portal? And absolutely, we can send any documents directly to the portal if that's their preferred way of having those. And then this is just basic discharge documentation. You know, the physician approved the discharge. You know, we're just putting timestamps on everything. They're given instructions and they understood them and whatever. We gave them back their personal effects, right? We returned them. Just anything that applies to you. Here's an ASC quality reporting, no adverse effects. There's the G code 8907 for that. If we do use this ASC quality reporting, there's a submit to Superbill button so that that G code, any G code that we have here can go out on this bill. And then of course, we're just signing off on it again. You can create that document for now. Some people say, oh, I don't create two different documents because we're generating a discharge instruction, whatever you want. But then also too, we may be generating a separate patient plan. And, you know, again, you don't have to necessarily, you may say, hey, that's going to be one and the same. We're going to have the plan on the discharge instruction. So we're not going to generate two documents for them. But it just really depends on what you want to do, how much information you want to give them. And then this is just patient education.
Can we customize the logos on the patient's instructions?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. That's a good question, though, because, you know, sometimes you look at that and you're like, you know, is NextGen going to be on everything? Or I don't even remember what we had on here. Sometimes we have our logo, sometimes we don't. But, oh, absolutely. In fact, I can take that off right now. But, yeah, you can have it default and dress it up any way you want. You can even have, you know, we've got at the bottom of these documents, we got an electronic signature with the surgeon's name too, and who created the document. Like, you know, I generated it, but this was for Dr. Jones, you know. You can even have an image of your actual signature on the bottom of these too. You don't have to have just a statement that says this was electronically signed by Dr. Jones. And then patient education, like I mentioned, you can have your own, or of course, we have patient education here. These are items here. There's a search criteria. You can have your own over down here, your practice defined. These are recommendations here just based on, you know, what it is that was going on with that patient. These are just recommendations. But right down here, you can have your own. And of course, there is multi-languages if you ever need them. And those can go to the portal too. So not only their discharge instructions, but if they say, I want my patient education to go to the portal too, then you can do that right from here too. There's a button right down here that says send to portal. So that's really it. Just want to remind you that, you know, it is configurable, but at least you have all of this out of the box in case you need it. Reminder that the physicians can come in here and only look at the panels that they need to, and we can rearrange those panels exactly how we want them so that they're very efficient. I only need a couple of panels to get in and out with my documentation.
Susan,
we can do that.
Sorry to interrupt, but can you show me how we can give a med reconciliation to a patient? Where is that located in this?
Yeah, so so the med reconciliation was, I think we had it in a couple screens. Let me go back here. We're doing a reconciliation right here.
Okay. So
yeah.
What we're probably going to do, like during if you choose this, we're going to remove these green panels from certain areas.
Okay.
Add them to other areas, just based on what your workflow is.
Yeah.
How do we do? Okay, so
we'd reconcile,
Yeah,
I guess, and then you generate the ASC intake notes.
Yep.
Okay.
So from that, so add or update, I see now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing we were talking about on our end when we were muted, just so everybody else on the phone understands, we could during the implementation, if there was a button that we clicked, every patient visit or surgical visit that we had, we could put a role behind that button that will auto-generate all of the documents. So let's say, for example, you know, there was a submit to super bill at the end of a surgical event. We could put rules behind that submit button so that it'll automatically generate all the documents we would ever need, and you don't need to manually click all those buttons. So that's kind of a configuration setting that we would work through and address during your implementation. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the way we even do that in the clinic, on the clinic side, even though there's fewer documents over there. One button.
Absolutely.
One button with many rules behind the scenes.
And Susan, I had another question. So can you show me the audit trail so that we can, if we needed to check an audit trail of the chart?
Okay, so
we can see who entered what when. Is there like a generated report for each patient that we can look at?
There is not out of the box. I don't want to mislead you, but that's something that we are capturing. So that report can be generated. You know, we can create it, but that's going to be something we're going to have to configure during implementation. But we are capturing all that. All of these different entries and these timeouts, everything is captured so that we know who signed things, when they signed it, who put it in a grid. We know all of that. We don't have a standard report for it today out of the box. So our clients or implementation create one during implementation. But you definitely can have one. Kind of like an audit, right?
Yeah, sorry, Ryan was kind of filling me in on some things. So where can, okay, so I'm just trying to put together, in my mind, I'm trying to, how we do our workflow on certain things. I just want to make sure the same kind of workflow can follow suit, which it sounds like it will. But where do we see if a chart is missing a signature, for example, or it's missing a field of some sort that needs that definitely needs populated? Number one, I assume these records can be finalized so that nobody else can make any adjustments to them.
Correct. When that happens, they'll have a little, over here on the right, they'll have a little lock. They become view only.
Yep.
And then you would have to add, an addendum. If it's locked, you have to add an addendum if you need to change something.
Change it if it's
right.
locked.
Okay.
So some people will lock like 3 days,
right,
or 5 days, or 2 weeks, or whenever you want that lock threshold to be set.
Yeah.
That's an enterprise. Yep, it'll automatically lock it. Nope. Based on the time frame that you set in file maintenance or practice preferences, it's somewhere on the back end.
So that's one of the questions I had too. Was so basically you're saying, will it flag us? Will it
tell us
if we are missing information? Like if we miss putting something in.
Right. If we're missing something, Susan, will this record flag for us?
Required fields?
Yeah, like
yeah. So required field, I was just going to go down that path because pretty much in all of these areas you can make things required if someone misses it. So some people like that. Some people say no because it's going to, you know, if it's required, it's going to kind of stall us for a minute. We're not going to be able to go elsewhere until we address it. But then some people say, well, that's exactly what I want. I want a hard stop, right? So some of that's configuration to say, I want a hard stop. Now, reports can be run to say, you know, are there entries that, you know, don't have a value, if you will, in a certain field, like a sign-off field, right? Or a timeout field or whatever. But there's a lot of things that you can control by making it required. You remember I had a couple pop-ups in a couple areas telling me stuff like you can't do that because you didn't, that wasn't a verbal order or whatever. You remember some of these little things, pop-ups that I had? That was similar. Now I bypassed them, but those are some alerts that we already have built in some areas that are very important where we're like, okay, you really shouldn't be doing that. So we have an audit trail of the fact that Susan, myself, went ahead and did that.
Okay.
So it does time and date stamp all user activity, even if I just looked at something but did not modify it. We just don't have a standard report out of the box reflecting all of that, because a lot of times our clients want to have a say in what all they want on that report. Some people want it very basic. Some people want it very detailed.
Okay.
Okay. But it does time and date stamp it. It is in the database, definitely available for reporting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And demo environments, we don't turn a lot of hard stops on, because since it is a demo environment and we're not, we do 30
Right.
specs. So the demo people aren't proficient in all of this. And if we had all these hard stops everywhere, it would make the system look awful, because we would be stopping every minute saying, okay, what was I supposed to do that I didn't do? We're like,
Right.
we don't turn on a lot of stuff that you have an opportunity to turn on. But some people say they want, like, see all these little things every time we had to hit something to say it was, we stamped it, right? We did this, we verified that. Some people want every one of those things to be hard stops. But since this is a SQL database, I don't know if that means anything to anybody on the call still, but that means it's easy to get to the information that we are, populating or not populating. Like a field that should have said completed by somebody, but the value is empty. Any other questions y'all can think of?
Yeah. So
if we have a general, like, nurse's note that we want to put in, where would we put that in? Like, currently we just have one big blank page that we can type stuff in and it gets added. Would we do that under that documentation log, or is there a limit to how much we could type under that documentation log?
I would put it in the documentation log if you want it to be in that centralized location where everybody can see it. And we can, some areas have limits, but most areas do not have limits as to what you can put in there. But it's kind of nice if it's something that you want everybody to be able to reflect on and to see wherever they happen to be in the course of, interacting with this surgery, then you want it in that documentation log. Because that's about assessments, that's routine quick notes, that's med administration, adverse effects, nursing assessments, that's the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah.
And that was the intent of it, is to have one place that everybody knows, okay, if I need to see something, I don't want to click 10 places to find out where it is. I'm going to go straight to the documentation log.
Yeah. Okay.
Another question I have, Susan, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this or not, but currently on our screen now, so I see it across the top, you have like the patient's information and all those kind of things. Right now we have a screen also on the top that carries to every page, no matter what page you're on, that has alerts on it, like this patient's on a blood thinner, or we can't use a specific arm for blood pressure or IV. Is there an area to put that would show on the, the top of the screen for everybody?
Right up here with your alerts, right up here at the very top. Now, so I don't even have to have a template open. I don't even have to have a history bar open. Right here. And another thing I can do with these, there's some controls in here too. So when I have something in here, it lights up red. Otherwise it's not red, it's gray. When I go from patient to patient, if I want to, I can have my alert screen actually pop up for me so I can see all of those. So if you're afraid they're not going to hover and they're going to miss it, you can have it come right up in their face as soon as they access a record. Now, if we could add something here. See, there's all kinds of things that you can do your own here. We could say no blood pressure, left arm, like you said, show in bold and red, even require acknowledgement. Here's one of those required things we're talking about. Pop up for acknowledgement. It's not enough to just bring an alert up. You have to say you read it, okay? So you could do that. So when we save and close, see right here? Now, when I close this, now we have 5 alerts. So look up here at the top. No blood pressure, left arm. But like I said, if you want the screen to pop up and you want them down here at the bottom to have to acknowledge it, you could put that rule on it right there as you create it. Does that work?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but this is pretty cool because you don't have to have it, but because it's an integrated system, somebody on the PM side scheduling or something might put something in there. And you might say, well, the clinical staff might want to see that, something that the front office staff put in there or whomever, right? And so if you want to, there's a preference that says, if there's any PM alerts too, I want to see them. And that way, you know, we don't have to do duplicate efforts. So if you've instructed the front staff who schedules these to, you know, obtain certain pieces of information, it can be right here too. Everything can be in one place. So they don't have to toggle over to the clinical side and vice versa. We all can see it no matter where we happen to be on the PM side or on the clinical side. That's nice. That's what you get with like an integrated solution, the ability to share those alerts or tasks and things.
Okay.
Don't forget, you have
currently, some of the physicians will ask that we send in a prescription or do a lab slip or an order. Is that something we would be able to do from the ASC side, or would we have to log into the clinical side to do something like that?
No, you can do it right from here. So I have, you know, here's even a hover for medications. But, you know, if I'm, you know, within the patient's record here, if, you know, I could be doing whatever, right? I could be in that, I could be anywhere I want to on a template, or I can be having it completely closed down. And I could go into my medication module right here at the top, and I could do a medication, or I can, you know, I can prescribe something new if I needed to. Well, you probably have that in your orders anyway. Also, too, I could order a lab. The easiest way to order a lab, because it doesn't matter what template I'm on. Look over here at this. See this blue bar? This is a CPOE bar, computerized order entry. So it has some intelligence too. So I have favorites. I can search for CBC or whatever it is they've told me we need. But if I just click in it, it remembers the order and pattern for the provider. So whatever they've ordered before will be here. It kind of rotates around X number of, you know, items here. And I can just click this little box over here and say whatever it is I want to order.
And that goes into the print, the record for the patient to take. Okay.
Yeah, anything you order can go into a patient plan or the discharge or whatever you have. So if I said that, I'm seeing what we've ordered lately using this doctor. Let's just say we don't even have a CBC or anything. Let's just say we're going to order a lipid just to show you the process. And down here at the bottom, I have the patient's diagnosis code or codes. And then let me show you what happens if I don't really order it. If I don't order it and I go about my business here, it tells me you got one incomplete order up here. You didn't order it. You just put it in kind of a, you know, holding status. So I could go back in and order it. Or I could put it in for the provider if you had a provider that said, you can put it in the system, but I want to hit the button to actually say place the order or whatever. So that's what that CPOE bar up there at the top, that blue bar stays there. Like I said, I don't even have to be on a template, but if I am, I can easily access it. Anything else y'all can think of?
That's something that can happen automatically.
Well, ask her that. I don't want to answer that because I'm not sure.
Susan, we have another question. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So Susan, I have a question. Currently, when we order something that say needs an authorization from the insurance company, we have to log in separately and send a message to our billing department to let them know that this was ordered, where the patient wants to have it, and you know, so that they can get the authorization. Is that something that can be done like automatically, that we could just click to say send a message, or like is there anything like behind the scenes that would help us with that part of things?
Yeah, if it's a medication, it can happen automatically. If it's a lab, then we're going to have to send them a message, okay? So
now we can, Susan, can we automate that task, correct?
from the CPOE bar, I don't know a way to do that. If they did it, you might, Ryan, you might be remembering like from the My Plan or something template.
Exactly, yep. From
that, we could. If I'm using the CPOE bar, I would have to actually, let me think about it. You know what?
Let's jot that one down.
Yeah, but
let's jot that one down.
From right here, see this little to-do? I could send them a little message from this little icon right here. And the subject, I could say, off needed.
Not logging in multiple systems.
Yeah, no, it can all happen right there.
Right.
I always let them know full blown automation.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
a couple clicks, but at least it's right there.
Right.
You know, it's right where you're at. You're not navigating to a different system.
And then I could have a group here. The billing people, I could say it's going to the billing people.
Then you can send it off.
It's that easy to do from that little icon right there, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's already better than what we do now. So even if you can't automate it any more than that, it's much easier.
Is it mostly labs? What kind of items are it that most likely need?
It's like x-rays, like CT scans or things like that we'll need like an authorization for, that we'll have to message someone in our billing department. So again, like Missy was saying, you just have to, we order it, then we log out of that particular screen, then we go into another module in our clinical EHR where we then send them a message letting them know the patient information. So then it's very cumbersome.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Do y'all put it in a temporary status like this one is before and don't order it until you get the auth, or do you go ahead and order it without the auth? What's that work on?
We order it without the auth, and we tell the patient that they'll need an authorization, and we let them know that everything's been passed along to our billing department to work on that. And then we pass it along to the appropriate person in our billing department.
Okay.
So we could still do it the exact same way, but the upside for us is we are doing it right from the screen that we're already working in. We're not logging out of that system to log back into another system and pulling the patient information back up again in the other system, just to be able to send one message.
Yeah, this is pretty easy right here. That's why it's for any purpose, right? Anything you can think of that you need to communicate with somebody very quickly. You'll have your own subject, right? So you don't have to type. Like you said, this is a CT or MRI. And if you want to have a category, you can. You don't necessarily have to have a category, but and then if you need to send a message, you don't have to, because they're used to it. If they see MRI come, you could say, this could say MRI auth needed. You don't ever have to type it.
Right, gotcha.
Now we can change the logic, because look what happens when I save it. When I save it, it asks me if I want to add a template or something. We could bypass that, because you don't need to necessarily. We can also bypass this selection of the task work group. So we could have it defined in the background that it always goes to the billing folks, so that you're not selecting it. So that we can actually get switch to them in a couple clicks, to be honest, changing the properties of this so we're not selecting.
Okay.
So we could probably get that down to about 3 clicks.
Yeah, that, again, I'm thrilled with just the fact that we can do it from the same screen. So, but I'll take the 3 clicks too. So I'm happy.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we in our room over here, Susan, we don't have any more questions. I know we went 30 minutes over, but that's great. I think the dialogue was awesome. As always, you showcase the product. If we come up with any questions, we'll kind of aggregate all of them. I know we're going to do the EHR tomorrow, but Vince and I and Ricky, we'll kind of, meet with the group, and once we're done with everything, maybe get a kind of summary email out, you know, with everything that's open-ended, because I think we're going to share these demo recordings, and I foresee future questions coming up as more and more people get involved. But I think that was a wonderful session today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank y'all for helping to guide me and for sharing some of your current workflows or even some of your challenges, because that's very helpful to us, and we love